All right, we're back here on Go Big Orange Friday, a very morose Go Big Orange Friday here as I make the announcement that it's seemingly unlikely. It's a game time decision tomorrow for Chase's appearance, going third person here at Neyland Stadium for the Gators versus the Vols at 3:30 on CBS. I broke my foot last week, and I'm in a boot. Some people are saying that it's one of the more bold and just admirable decisions to not make the trek to see Tennessee, Florida in person in an effort to heal my foot. The same foot injury that caused Michael Jordan to play 7 minutes a half for a full season in 1985 because he wanted to come back after 6 weeks away in a boot. For the same injury, left foot. But Ryan Schumpert of Rocket Top Insider is here to get me through this agony. Very, very frustrated. Goodness gracious. I don't know what else to say, Ryan. I'm just so frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, it is. We were talking about it before we were airing. I didn't even think about it. Obviously, I don't know, but I can't. I feel like you never take vacation. So of course, on the honeymoon, one vacation, boom, broken foot. This is your reward for one time taking a vacation and not going 100 miles per hour throughout your fall. So some would call it a heroic move, truly, and no doubt a selfless move by you, looking like you're not going, questionable to doubtful. But yeah, I can't say I envy you. It's an incredibly tough break.
Is that a joke? Tough break? Is that a bit? Are you doing a pun? Was that an intentional pun? Are you trying to hurt me, Ryan?
No, I'm just that good. It wasn't even intentional, and I just hit one right on the nose.
I have never broken a bone, and it's just, I mean, I don't know if I can even get this up. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this up and show the listeners on youtube.com, but no, I'm not going to try it. That would be even dumber to like break something else in an effort to show the boot. I promise the boot's real, and it's not spectacular, but you know, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. I need to do the Hugh Freeze thing. I need to talk to him and see if I can do the thumbs up from the press box. Maybe that's what they can do. They can airlift me into the stadium and just set me up that way. And then that's how I watch the game. But at that point, it's like if I'm in that kind of capacity, I might as well just stay on my couch and have my foot elevated if I'm going to be in a bed rest situation. I don't know. Every answer I come to, Ryan, is just pain and agony and frustration. I don't know. This sucks. The timing's terrible. Like summer would have been perfect. Who cares? Like summer, it's hot. It's terrible. No sports going on. We only get a couple of these games every year. Like this is the biggest Tennessee game in a really long time, and I've been looking forward to this for, I mean, just months. And I don't know. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to go to Kentucky when that's happening. Like I just. Goodness gracious. I'm so frustrated. I'm so flustered.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's like the positive. I feel like with us, maybe a little bit smaller crowd or at least less chaos around the stadium for like Kentucky, maybe you'll be able to make it work. But like, just like we were talking about, any sort of option you have or any sort of route you look at to make it work, you just realize, oh yeah, it's Florida. There's going to be a billion people on campus, and that makes getting around in crutches extremely difficult. So it's
an injury, a re-injury. It's just something else is going to happen. I don't think I can do it in good conscience. Like it's just the dumb guy brain, sports guy brain of like, it'll be fine. Like I can find a way. And then you get there in reality, you're like, nope, this was a mistake. I can't do any of this. This is a nightmare. Well, either way, it's still happening. Tennessee is still playing Florida. And let me check my notes here. Every recruit who's ever been recruited by the University of Tennessee will be at this game. And that's both very cool and also terrifying that everybody's going to see this up close. Nico on down, 2024 kids, Devin Hobbs is going to be in the building. It really is going to be an all-time recruiting weekend. I don't know. Are they all going to be on the field? How does this work? Because that is a lot. Like I looked at the full list of names today. And Ryan, it looks like an obscene amount, which I'm here for, but also it's kind of ballsy to do all of this for Florida with the history there. And I don't know if you want all of these kids to see this in person. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the whole thing.
I like it. Lean into it. I mean, Josh Heupel's leaned into it all week. I remember Butch Jones was Tennessee's coach in all these games. He wouldn't lean into what a big game it was, and it's a big game because it's the next one, but it's not any different. And Josh Heupel's kind of had that same mindset of you can always focus on what's ahead of you. But he's talked about it this week that he's addressed it with his team that this is a huge game and there are a lot of stakes on this game, and there's going to be a lot of buzz around this game, and to enjoy it. As I wrote an article this week, the eyes of college football will be on Knoxville. And I think, he's kind of addressed it that way to embrace it with his team. And I kind of respect it. I like it doing the same thing with the recruiting on it. And you're right. I mean, it's hard not to see the potential negative of it, of the disaster looming of a Tennessee-Florida game, especially one where Tennessee is double-digit favorites, which is, they're uncharted territory for this program. But I like it. And you're right. I mean, it's not a ton of 2023 guys. You hit on Davion Hobbs. He's probably the biggest one. Bison Lang, an offensive lineman from down in Alabama, probably being another one too. But man, it seems about just every single big time 2024, 2025 recruit is going to be on Tennessee's campus.
Well, we'll see what it ultimately means. Devin Hobbs ending up in this class will be pretty cool. But in terms of the actual game, Ryan Schumpert, it's time for clairvoyant Ryan to enter the chat. Do you think the Tennessee Volunteers beat Florida tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know from me coming on your podcast now for I guess going on 2 years, I think. Yeah, I've long been, I'm going to have to see Tennessee beat Florida guy to pick them. But this week, or see him beat them more consistently. But this week, as I've spent, my whole livelihood looking at the game and studying the game and using my brain to logically, look at the game with logic. And I think Tennessee wins. I just think the question marks with Florida's offense are just huge. And I think the fact that, and someone I'll really be looking at on Saturdays, it seems like Anthony Richardson's banged up. He took a hit in that Kentucky game and looked a little gimpy after it. And they didn't run him much at all against South Florida. And he looked tentative to run. And granted, going into that game, maybe the game plan was not to run him because they didn't feel like they had to. But by the fourth quarter, they had to run him, and they still didn't run him. So, I think it's probably maybe, they were trying to save his, his legs for the Tennessee game. But I think it's probably maybe a little bit more serious than anyone in Gainesville is letting on. And if Anthony Richardson isn't able to beat Tennessee with his legs, I have a hard time seeing Florida's offense having a ton of success against Tennessee.
What is the biggest reason for concern about Tennessee winning this game?
I think it's, I said this to somebody yesterday. When I'm looking at path to Tennessee winning, path to Tennessee losing, it's very similar around Anthony Richardson. The path to Tennessee losing is Anthony Richardson does what everybody did against Tennessee's defense last year. I mean, you go back to last season and Emory Jones, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Stetson Bennett, and Matt Corral, all their biggest rushing game in the year was all against Tennessee. And Emory Jones and Corral, really the only two guys in that bunch that are true running quarterbacks, ran for over 120 yards.
All of which were on third and short.
Yes, sometimes not third and short either. And I mean, I've never seen an Ole Miss team just run quarterback draws on third and long with complete confidence that they were going to work, and they did. So that's the path. That is how does Tennessee lose? That's it. It's Anthony Richardson being really dynamic with his legs. He's making plays. The path to Tennessee winning, and when you look at Florida's offense, I think it's the fact that Anthony Richardson has really struggled against zone defenses. Teams have been able to confuse him this year. And you look, Tennessee is a team that runs a ton of zone blitzes. I mean, go back to that Pittsburgh game. They run a ton of zone always. And in that Pittsburgh game, they were incredibly aggressive attacking with zone blitzes. And Keaton Slovis did a good job for the most part of making quick reads and getting the ball in the right spot. And he was just getting those balls out in the first half just in time when he didn't take some crucial sacks like the one that knocked him out of the game. That's Slovis's strength as a quarterback, is being able to process the defense quickly and make the right reads. That has not been Richardson's strength. If Tennessee can get some of these blitzes home, confuse him, hit him when he's already a little gimpy coming into this game, I think Florida's offense is going to have a lot of problems. And in a game like this, Florida's offense is not going to be able to have a lot of problems and win. We'll see what Tennessee does. Cedric Tillman's injury is kind of the big question mark for Tennessee's offense, but with or without him, I think Tennessee's going to be able to score 30 points in this game. And if Anthony Richardson doesn't come out and have a good game, I don't think Florida can keep up.
What does no Cedric Tillman mean for the Vols offense on Saturday?
I think it means a lot more targets for Brew McCoy.
Mm.
I talked about it in ad nauseum really after the Pittsburgh game that they need to throw him the ball more. And it's no surprise that Cedric Tillman is Hendon Hooker's security blanket. He's been throwing the ball to him now for over a year. They had all offseason throw together where McCoy just got here in the offseason. He was dealing with a hip injury when he got here. So Hooker and McCoy were still trying to kind of get that continuity, but I think he's a big time playmaker. I think he's really capable of making big plays. And Saturday, if Tillman doesn't go, which is kind of how things seem to be looking here, a little over 27, 28 hours out from kickoff, I think it's going to be McCoy getting a lot of targets. Hyatt certainly as well is going to get his opportunities, but Hyatt's going to get his opportunities even if Tillman was in the game. So I think it leads to a lot more looks for Brew McCoy, and then I'll be really curious to see who gets Tillman's reps if he doesn't go. I think McCoy's the one who gets a lot of his targets, but is it a rotation? Do they go heavy with a guy like Ramel Keaton, or is it there's a lot of bodies there? I mean, we talked about in the preseason, Tennessee talked about wanting to play 7 or 8 guys. I said, I don't think they're going to do that because they're going to want to play their starters. Well, now that they have one of their starters out, do they have one guy step up, or is it by rotation? My thought is it'll probably be rotation, and you'll see Ramel Keaton, Walker Merrill, Jimmy Holiday get a decent bit of reps. And the one that I would be really curious to see is, does Josh Heupel trust Squirrel White in a game like this to play him? He's been a slot guy, which obviously is where Hyatt's at, but does Hyatt get some reps outside, or do they move Squirrel White outside? Because to me, of those 4 guys that I named as backups, he's the most dynamic playmaker and could present the most problems for Florida's defense. I'll be interested to see how much trust Heupel puts in the freshman.
I mean, my guess, what I think based on what we've seen from Golish and Heupel to this point, is they're going to move Hyatt outside. I think they're going to move him outside, and they're going to put Squirrel right there at the slot. I think if I had to guess who gets the most snaps, if Tillman does not play, if I had to guess who gets the most snaps in the 11 personnel out wide, I would guess that would be the rotation. Squirrel, I mean, he put him out there for punt returns. We'll see if he's returning punts on Saturday. I think there's enough there where I would not be surprised if he is the one. Like, Merrill and Holiday makes the most sense, right? Like, that's probably of just you move Brew over. Hyatt's been comfortable in the slot. You don't move there, and then you just see who looks better between Holiday and Merrill, and you ride one of those two guys throughout the course of the game at the other spot. And it's like they've already gotten away with that last year anyway. It wasn't like Peyton was getting targeted a bunch at that other outside receiver spot. So really, I'm not even sure it really matters if you slide Brew over and Jalen stays in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're lacking guys to throw to if that happens. Yeah. But you're lacking Cedric Tillman, who's the best, receiver in the SEC.
And 33% of Hooker's targets. Like, Hooker is that's been his guy.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to last year, even when, I guess in the last month of the season, Tillman kind of started to pull away from Velus as Tennessee's leading receiver. But for a lot of last year, Tillman and Velus were pretty even in stats and yards and production. But anytime it was third and intermediate, anytime it was third and long, and Tennessee has to attack that intermediate passing game, which they don't do a ton on first downs. We know it's a lot of quick stuff. We know it's a lot of stuff down the field. It is always Cedric Tillman, who Hendon Hooker has that comfort level and wants to go to. So I think in that sense, that's where you feel the loss more than anything. And I think because of that, this can't be a game like the Pitt game where you get into a lot of third and longs and you lose first downs and you're slow to get things going. I think Tennessee getting that first down on drives is going to be super, super important. And I think Tennessee being successful on first down and not putting itself in obvious passing situations in third and long where a Florida defensive line that's not as good as it typically is getting out of their passer can get a little bit more creative coming after them in Tennessee. And Hooker then doesn't have this security blanket in Tillman. I think that's where Tennessee has to win in early downs, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll see what ultimately happens. But because it was a weird way Cedric got injured. Like, obviously, a friendly fire there getting knocked into. Like, it said he's been living in the training room all week and trying to get right. Do we really know what the full extent of, like, even what he has and what ultimately happened and if there was any actual damage? Because it's like the ankle's not right. And as someone who's dealing with the foot thing, I'm not certain this is something that's just going to go away in a couple weeks or even just 1 week. I'm more concerned about the big picture here with Tillman. And I wonder if they're kind of hiding how much concern there is long-term for this season with him.
Yeah, I don't really think that's the case. I maybe wonder of it being something that nags him all season and he doesn't get back to 100%.
Because you need rest.
That to me seems extremely logical. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be something that sidelines him a super long time. And I do think that the bye week ends up being at a perfect time for Tennessee to get Tillman back for the LSU game, which to me I think is probably what they've been targeting most of the week. If I had to be, I mean, obviously Tillman, like you said, has been in the training room a ton. He wants to be ready to play, but realistically, I think that's kind of always been the target, and I think he will be. I don't think he will miss a ton of time. Is he 100% when he comes back? To me, to your point, I think that's probably more accurate. And that was the other thing that's interesting about it is that it ended up being an ankle injury.
Yeah,
and you mentioned it. It was the friendly fire on and the speed option when Dylan Sampson got rolled up into him. He came back into the game after that, which is really, really odd.
Well, hold on. As a fellow athlete and a premier athlete, there's an adrenaline part of it when you get injured and you're in that motion and you're just like, your body's like, it's fine, go, go, go. It's not that bad. And you keep going and you're like, I'll shake it off. It's that next morning. It's the later on when you're out of the football pads and everything else, and you're like, oh, is that what my ankle looked like? Is that where I'm at? And then it starts hitting you. The adrenaline rush.
Yeah, and I agree with that from Cedric Tillman's standpoint.
Yeah.
But, like, he went into the medical tent, the trainers looked at him, and Jabari Small earlier in the game, second carry of the game, he goes down, comes over very quickly in the medical tent, very quickly out of it, didn't seem serious. He was a full participant at practice Tuesday, and they were like, we're not putting Jabari Small back in against Akron. Are you kidding me? Why was that not that seems like that would have been the case with Tillman too, which to me is the surprising part. And then obviously when he got that low hit and it kind of looked like he was holding his knee after that play, they took him out and didn't put him back in after that. But I thought it was interesting that it did end up being an ankle, which you went in the game after what, seemed to get rolled up there. And you're right. I mean, if it was Florida, they're playing Florida and that happened, Tillman's probably going back in and finishing the game. The adrenaline's pushing him. I'm just surprised that.
And he's like a bowling ball for an ankle after the game.
Yeah. He literally can't get his sock and shoe off. But yeah, to me, that was kind of the other interesting element of the injury.
Speaking of Jabari Small, like one of the weird things about this Tennessee season to this point, we talk about the depth and stuff like that, but it's really just they haven't been very like I was not a Jabari Small truther. A lot of folks just penciled in Jabari Small. Did you hear this? Did you hear about this? He put on some weight and some muscle this offseason and was going to be able to be more of a 3-down back and someone they can count on more. But he really hasn't run the ball well. And I can't figure, I don't know where I would pinpoint as to why Tennessee has struggled to run the ball to the extent that they have versus last year. And it's not like it's a gigantic problem, but I think last time I looked over, it's like they're 70th in rush yards per game at this point on CFB stats. And you go through different things like Hooker, obviously just not turning the ball over and it's been fine. Maybe targeting Cedric Tillman a little bit too much in the passing game, maybe a little inaccurate. Aaron Murray found a couple of those in the Akron game where he's like, it's just a second off, or Hooker's he's just not perfect. And you've just become accustomed to Hooker being basically perfect to this point as the Tennessee starter. But it is weird that something I jotted down, I'm like, there is something a little off, which is both awesome because it's like they're winning and everything else, and he hasn't even been the best version of himself. But you're also like, I don't know what to do there. But in your estimation, Ryan, like what have you seen that would make the best rationale as to why Tennessee has not been great at running the football through 3 weeks?
Yeah, to me, I'm just like wait and see on the run game, I guess, because they played 3 games this year, and 2 of them were against Akron and Ball State, and you'd probably like to see them running, a little bit better than they did, but they ran the ball well in both those games as you'd expect them to. And then the other game was against probably the 3rd best run defense they're going to see this year behind Alabama and Georgia. So I do think you have a little bit of just completely opposite directions of who you face, and it's kind of hard to figure out what this run game is at this point. And I'm not panicking about it, or I'm not overly concerned, because I think you go back to last year and Tennessee ran the ball poorly against Pittsburgh last year. I think you were kind of in a similar spot at this point last year as you are right now. But you're right, Small in particular, and some of his struggles have been surprising. And I think he's been good. When you talk about the weight and being a 3-down back, I think he's been good in 3rd and short in those situations this year. I think he's been better than he was last year, but you just haven't seen kind of the same wiggle and ability to get to the 2nd and 3rd level for most with him. And I do think I just don't think this is a great run blocking offensive line. I think they're fine. I think they're middle of the pack, but it's not. They're not going to just run out there and bully a lot of opponents. And maybe Missouri, maybe it'll be a repeat of last year. But to me, that's kind of a huge question mark. Maybe not question mark, but just a wait and see mode for me. This running game, and Florida feels like an opportunity for a get right game in the running game because Florida's run defense has really struggled this year, and their best linebacker Vontrell Miller is questionable, seemingly kind of like Cedric Tillman, more doubtful than questionable. And I think you will see Tennessee use Hendon Hooker his legs a lot on Saturday to be more creative and to get another blocker in there. But I think that's really a huge opportunity. And for me, one of the keys in the game is seeing Tennessee's run game can get right, and obviously that would help them win those early downs that I talked about earlier and make life a little bit easier on the passing attack without Tillman.
I also think, the speed option stuff with Sampson was very cool. And I think he's going to play sooner rather than later. And I think that's something that's going to help a lot too, is if they have Jalen Wright, just the yards after, like he's just bouncing off tackles and he's just a problem to bring down. And Jalen Wright, I think, has been the best of the bunch to this point. But
yeah,
I think Dylan Sampson's going to be in this rotation and get a lot of carries and be used sooner. It might be Florida if they're needing some extra juice, and there's another wrinkle there where Florida's not totally expecting Dylan to be a big part of that playbook this weekend. I could see it. Very excited about Sampson. I think he's going to play sooner rather than later.
Yeah, he's looked really well, really kind of what we've heard in fall camp.
Yeah.
You heard a lot of buzz about him, and I think he's lived up to it to this point. He's definitely been really solid, and you're right. I think the question mark is if no one's banged up, how many reps does he earn? How many carries does he earn? Because we've seen for the most part, if Tennessee has its top two guys healthy, they're going to roll with them. In the past 2 years, I speak broadly about the Josh Heupel era, and then but it's the running back spot. Naturally, guys are going to be banged up, I think, and you're right. I think they're not going to be, when that time comes, I don't think they're going to be hesitant at all to give Sampson opportunities.
When we look at Mitchell, who we were wondering whether or not he was going to play, and if we'd ever see a Jawan Mitchell, Ethan has been wondering if he actually is a member of the Tennessee Volunteers. We saw Mitchell and we saw Brandon Turnage last weekend. What did you make of both players making their debut essentially for Tennessee against Akron?
Yeah, I thought both of them were probably a little bit underwhelming. I don't think either of them had a great game. Now, granted, Turnage didn't play a ton, and I think those were different situations.
He might be playing a ton this weekend.
I don't think so. Maybe, but
so what do you do with D. Williams out, and then you have, Christian Charles is obviously probably going to start, but Warren Burrell's banged up.
That's what the situation was last weekend, and they were playing Akron, and he still didn't play much. This is how I felt. What you just said is exactly how I felt going into last week's game. We were going to see a lot of Brandon Turnage because who else was going to play? But they just rolled. Once they got to the backups, they just rolled the guys that probably won't, aren't even knocking on the door of playing a lot. And when the game was still in the first half, it was. Turnage did get some run, but it was still mostly Charles and Haddon. So that's kind of my expectation.
He must be dining with Jimmy Callaway Jr. too much. That's got to be what it is. There must be some friendship between the two of them. And Heupel's like, can't do it. He's a close confidant of Jimmy Callaway. I can't trust him.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels at this point, because it's been really befuddling just how little he's played. And you go back to last year, and he was one of the main guys out of the non-starters who played a lot and played well when he had opportunities. I think when Theo Jackson was out one game, maybe the South Carolina game. And then even you go back early in fall camp, I remember one of the coaches, I can't remember if it was Tim Banks or maybe Willie Martinez, the defensive back coach, kind of saying talking about all the guys and all the question marks in the defensive back room. And Turnage, he'll probably, he's going to end up somewhere. I'm not sure where. He was kind of foregone conclusion to be one of the main guys to play. And it has not been that. So, I don't expect to see a ton of him. To me, for Jawan Mitchell, who I didn't think played particularly well last week against Akron, he is going to play a lot. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. How much better can he be in game 2 this season once he's knocked off a little bit of rust?
When you look at how this game goes, what is the path to, what does the game look like for Florida to win on Saturday?
I think Florida has long drives where they convert a lot of third downs and they run the ball effectively. Tennessee doesn't get them in third downs. They get into a lot of 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 5 where you have Richardson as a threat to run. You you make Tennessee defend everything. And then defensively, they do what what Pittsburgh did, really, essentially in that game. In its first stretches of the game, you take Tennessee's offense out of it, really like Pittsburgh did for the first half of that first quarter and basically the whole third quarter, where you just don't. Tennessee's offense is never able to get in a rhythm. You don't let them get that first down, and then when Florida's offense is on the field, they run a lot of clock and shorten the game and really lessen the opportunities for Tennessee's offense.
Yeah, I think that's how I saw it too, because I've seen some people like, oh, the back and forth. I'm like, if Florida wins this game, it's not a back and forth. It's like 17-16 or something. It's something really, really low scoring where Tennessee has a 3-and-out, kind of like the Pitt game, except they just sit on the ball when they get up 10-0. They just really are able to sit on it and run the clock out and just play keep away, where Tennessee has a couple 3-and-outs early and the Tennessee defense is on the field a bunch, then yeah, you could see it. It's so funny, man, because I don't see a path to Florida winning this game, which is so stupid. Like, it's just so
such
dumb,
a horrible. You say that, and then you just have like a pit in your gut, just like that's not a good feeling to have,
right? Because it's like if you remove the Florida Tennessee aspect to it, and all we knew was like what we seen from Team X versus Team Y, and you remove the history and everything else, you're like, oh right, they should win this game by 3 touchdowns. Like this matchup should go this way because of this offense, because of where this other offense is at, and like who's gonna be like. That's how it should go. Like, it ultimately should go that way. And I don't know, man. Like, this is just such a huge moment. And 4-0 Tennessee. I don't know. Like I said before the year, I said Tennessee was either going to go like 6-6, 7-5, or like 10-2. And this is the game that I think splits it off, where it's like the come down from losing this particular game, I think will be tough to then get up for LSU in Baton Rouge right after, and then Bama. I don't know. You could see how the season can kind of just deflate a little bit in the middle part of it if this goes awry. But also, if they win, it's like, oh, well, then, I mean, they should be favored at Baton Rouge. They should be favored every other game outside of Bama and Georgia. And you're like, oh, the path's really actually weirdly kind of easy for 10-2. And we'll see. I don't know.
You're probably favored in 10 games if you win on Saturday.
That's huge. Like year 2, favored in 10 of your 12 games for the high player. Like but hey, it's favored. We'll end on this. Your favorite Florida memory, Ryan, in the Tennessee rivalry, and your least favorite is what?
Okay, well, there's 2 good ones for favorite, so I'll go least favorite. And it's 2015. Like it's got to be. I mean, whatever it was, 10 straight losses at that point. I'm a sophomore in high school. I remember I was watching it at a friend's house who wasn't a Tennessee fan, and Aaron Medley missed that kick, and I just remember just saying thanks and just walking out of the house and feeling like I was going to throw up in his yard, just being so disgusted at how Tennessee blew that game in very Tennessee fashion. And, for best memory, I was in the house both times Tennessee has beaten Florida. My very first game in Neyland Stadium was the 2004 Florida
game. Were they both as fans?
Yes, yeah, because I was in high school.
So that's what I was wondering, Ryan. So you're out of the booth this week. Like, I think we kick Ryan out of the booth. I think you need to be with the fans, and you need to appreciate it as a fan this weekend. That's what we got to do.
Well, I don't know about that. My last 2 games as a fan in this rivalry was the Hail Mary, and then in 2018 when I was a freshman, and that game was over by the end of the first quarter. So I don't know about that. Tennessee just hasn't been very good against Florida, period. They weren't very good when I was a fan either. So then they haven't been very good when I've been a Big J. So, but I will go favorite memory. My favorite memory, I will go 2016 when, as a member, I was like, I'm never going to a Tennessee Florida game until Tennessee beats Florida. I mean, it's kind of funny. This memory's coming back to me. I hadn't thought about this in a long time. I was in student council, and that was homecoming week, and for the first time we had a homecoming dance. And since I was in student council, I had to go to homecoming dance. And I was like, I remember telling my dad that week, I was like, if Tennessee loses to Florida, there is not a chance I will walk into that school. We have to go to the game, so I have an excuse not to do anything. And we went to the game, and it was an awful first half, and I was in the bathroom, in a stall in the bathroom at halftime in the south end zone, and the lock got jammed, and I had to crawl out on the floor, and it had to be one of the true low moments of my life to be crawling on a nasty floor out of a stall in a Neyland Stadium bathroom as Tennessee is getting beat by 3 touchdowns to Florida again in like the scorching 95-degree heat. But then, hey, we all know what happens in the second half, and it was a lot of fun.
Holy shit. I did not expect that story. You're crawling. I've been in those bathrooms. I don't know if I could do it.
It was terrible. It was It was the I just remember being there, and again, it's 95 degrees. I'm sweating unbelievably, and being like, "This right here is the definition of being down bad." I am down so bad right now. But then 2 hours later, I was not down bad. 2 hours later, I was as happy as I'd been in a long time. So,
man,
great memories of the second half. I guess your question was literally favorite memory, and I just told about how awful my first half of that game was. First half and halftime of that game was. But the memories of the second half are what persevere.
They had us in the first half. It's the meme right there.
Yeah.
You did the real life meme. That's amazing. I don't think I've ever. That's like a nightmare scenario of like a one that you hope never happens to you, of getting locked in like a porta potty bathroom or in a nasty bathroom stall. And I don't think either have ever happened to me. Knock on wood to this point, but goodness gracious, Nealon's one of the ones I would not want that to be the case.
I just remember like washing my hands for so long that there were like 3 or 4 people coming in and like they were done washing their hands, and it was like the next person, boom.
Was there anybody else in the bathroom who saw you? So you were isolated.
No, there were people. I mean,
so they were watching.
It wasn't like one of the massive bathrooms with like, however many stalls, but there were, 3 or 4. There were people. People saw me crawl out from under there.
Yeah,
and I just like lock got jammed. Most monotone voice.
I'm not weird, I promise.
Bad.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Ryan, what can the good folks check out from you across Rocky Top Insider this week?
Yeah, tons of stuff previewing the game, and then I'll have sometime, probably by the time this podcast is out, my 3 keys to the game. We'll have game predictions, and then everything else you need to know if Tennessee gets set for their SEC opener against the Florida Gators.
Goodness gracious. Fingers crossed. I'll be doing the thumbs up from the Hugh Freeze booth in my living room on Saturday, unfortunately. But look, it is what it is, and I got to prioritize my long-term viability and health and mobility with my foot. So, Ryan Schumpert, thank you as always, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Sounds great.